So continuing on here with the interview and active listening, just some tips we have here. Again, we know that some of these are being reiterated, but stay engaged. Eye contact and smiling, even though you're looking at a computer screen, it goes a long way. There's somebody on the other end of that, and the ability to nod, have, make agreeing, yes, I understand, things like that. It goes a long way because it shows that you're really doing your best to listen to what they're saying. And I think oftentimes in interviews, whether it's the nerves or trying to be as prepared as possible, you are trying to forecast and guess what the answer is going to be to a question that you're being asked. And I really encourage you all to not do that and to be as in the present moment as you can. Trust that you have the appropriate skill set, trust your background, trust that you will know how to answer the question, and just take your time and really try to listen to what they're saying, because you'll get an opportunity maybe to ask a more detailed question off of that, or to implement part of what they said into your answer. And that's how you're really going to knock it out of the park with a great answer there. Continuing on off of that is don't interrupt the interviewer, right? Part of active listening and active answering is the ability to not cut people off and let them really explain or ask a question to the full capacity. So what I always tell candidates off of this is the 3-second rule, where you take, and it's a very unnatural feeling when you start, but take and give yourself kind of an internal clock of, hey, I am going to wait 3 seconds before I answer. And it does a couple of things. First and foremost, it allows the interviewer to finish their question. Second is it gives you a moment to collect your thoughts. And then finally, it allows you really just to give the best answer. I think oftentimes we jump to conclusions, especially if we know an answer, and we want to answer it immediately. We're excited to get the answer out. We're excited to really show that we know what we're talking about. But it can oftentimes be more powerful if you just take a moment, sit back, think about it, and then deliver a very complete, to the point answer. Continuing on is body language, right? Check your posture, make sure that you are square to the camera. If you can, set up your camera so that you can see your hands and you can really kind of tell a story better. You don't want to be to the side. You don't want to have your camera this way and then a monitor to the side so that you're looking off at their faces and it doesn't even look like you're really paying attention. You want to be fully locked in, square shoulders, talking to the people that are interviewing you. And then finally, Isabel mentioned this earlier, but repeating questions. We like to say that you have a limit of really kind of one time to do this during an interview. So if you're asked a very complex question, or maybe you just didn't really get what they were asking, you can take a moment and say, hey, Trip, thanks so much for asking that. Is there maybe a way that you could explain that in a different way? I wasn't really following. Or, is there another example you might be able to use? There's nothing wrong with that, and it will allow you to give a more complete answer once you get it a little bit more. Alrighty, so some things to avoid. We wanted to include these topics again because we think they're super important. But first and foremost, do not talk about compensation. I'm going to say that again. Do not talk about compensation. It is super important in an interview with a hiring manager that oftentimes they don't even know. They don't know the benefits. They don't know how much the job's offering. They don't know what the PTO looks like. They don't know any of that. They are focused on finding the best fit for the candidate and for the role. And that's what you should be focusing on. If you have an external recruiter that's working third party with you for this opportunity, or if there's an internal procurement resource or HR partner, you want to save all of those questions for them. That's their job, and they're there to assist you with those type of questions. Additionally, oftentimes you'll find in smaller companies like startups, they aren't going to have as robust resources on the procurement and HR side. So you might have to ask the hiring manager or the team lead, whoever's conducting the interviews. But I encourage you to wait until you know that this is an opportunity that is very serious on both parties' sides before you start drilling down into the specifics. I think I can speak for Isabel and myself when I say that is one of the biggest red flags that we see from candidates is if they are very money driven. It's oftentimes something that just, they don't really care about the work, that all they want is the paycheck. And if that's something that is important to you, that's fine. But it needs to be just a piece of the equation and not the entire picture. And then we already mentioned this one, but just lean in if you don't know an answer, own it, and I think you'll be surprised at the respect that comes with not knowing something and being able to own that. And then lastly is just to avoid kind of what we call the big three in terms of personal views. So the big three of those are politics, religion, and money. We already mentioned money, but we put controversial topics in there. If there's something in popular culture or something that's on the news headlines, we just encourage you to keep it professional. Try not to mention that during the interview. There are some cases where, depending on the type of role that you're looking for, certain cultural or political or personal views are a huge piece of the culture. So I just encourage you to do your work on the front end, identify the company that might have that type of culture so that you're prepared going in, knowing that a question like that might arise. But for the most part, rule of thumb, try to avoid that. Alrighty, so closing the deal, and this is while you are still in the interview itself. If you thought it went well and you're really enjoying it, you want to try to confirm next steps, right? So if the hiring manager doesn't mention that themselves, then ask about it. Hey, really enjoyed it. What is it going to look like for next steps? I'm very interested in pursuing this. There's nothing wrong with mentioning that you're very interested in the company. I think sometimes people want to see that passion. And if you've taken the time to identify the role in the company and that's something you really want to do, there's nothing wrong with letting the people know that, because I think that can sometimes be the deciding factor between maybe somebody that's a little more qualified versus somebody that's going to bring that energy, that passion every single day. And then thank yous, they're really important. Everybody has very busy schedules. Usually hiring is a small percentage of what these managers are doing day to day. So the fact that they carve out 30 minutes to an hour for you is a big deal. And then moving into the reflection. So as Isabel mentioned earlier, you have your Excel or your notebook, however you want to do it, already written out. And now is the time where you're going to focus on the notes. You're going to do that 4-minute rule that we'll talk about here in a second, but you really just want to do it immediately after the interview while it's still fresh so that you can kind of help process that. And on the next slide, we'll dive into this 4-minute rule here. So the 4-minute rule is to take that Excel sheet and to immediately write down the top 3 adjectives that come to mind after that interview. So let's just say, for example, my interview with Trip, I felt like the team was welcoming, energetic, and compassionate. And those are 3 things that I'm really looking for. I'm looking for people that are going to get me excited. They're going to, have my back while we're working through really tough projects. And it's something that when I am going back and reflecting on all of the opportunities, let's just say, because you absolutely crush all of your interviews after this prep course, that you have 5 offers and you're reviewing and you can't really remember which one you want to go with, you can look at those 3 adjectives and it'll really take you back to how you felt right after the interview and kind of really help you decide which route you want to go. And this is time for yourself. This isn't about the company or the manager you interviewed with. This is about yourself and how you felt. And there's many different ways you can do that, whether it's writing down your thoughts, journaling, just putting a couple bullet points together, calling a friend, whatever it might be. You know yourself and you need to take the time to write down the reflection that's going to adequately work to your personality. And then the big 5. This is another big thing that we recommend here, to review before you get into the interview so that you have these questions in the back of your mind. But it's really going to help you kind of decide how you feel about the role. So first off is, what were some of the questions they asked, right? Was it more technical? Was it more of a functional role? Is that fitting with the type of job I want? What do you think of the people, right? You're going to spend 40 hours a week with these people and hopefully you're going to like them, right? Are these the type of personalities that you can do well with? And then a big one as well is, were there any red flags that were concerning to you? It's really important that you jot these down because it can be the deciding factor on if you pursue an opportunity or not. I think people often forget when they're interviewing that there's a large amount of leverage that you have as the candidate. Companies need good people just as much as you want to work at that company. And it's really important that if there was a major red flag or even a smaller red flag, that really doesn't make you feel too good inside, then that's important. And following that gut and intuition goes a long way. And then how did the interview end? What were the next steps that were mentioned, and did they provide a timeline? And then finally, could you envision yourself working at the company? That's a big one. Alrighty, we're getting towards the end here, but in terms of follow-up, what you want to do is check in with that recruiter if possible, and write some thank yous to the people that interviewed you. If you can send it directly, if they don't have a recruiter or procurement process, that's fine. I suggest that you work directly through your recruiter on the thank yous, and stay on top of them around timeline. Oftentimes, it's an unfortunate fact, but people do fall through the cracks in these, and they could be a great fit. It's just there's a lot of things going on. They might have 10 to 12 people interviewing, and don't think that you are imposing or being annoying or a nuisance if you are following up in the timeline that they said and then continuing to stay in touch. Oftentimes it shows your perseverance and the serious nature which you're approaching this opportunity. And then we already mentioned these already in the thank yous, but really just thank people for their time, share the excitement about the role, and then make sure you have at least one specific example that you can mention from your interview in the thank you. And then final thoughts. So this is, I know we spent the last 45 minutes giving you all a lot of information, and just to kind of wrap, don't overthink it. It's just two people having a conversation. I think it's very easy to get nervous, get in your own head, think it's this big, massive corporation, whatever the case may be, but it's just another person that you're having a conversation with, and view it that way. And then going off of that, it's not bad to bring some lighthearted humor to an interview in order to build rapport. They want to hire people. They don't want to hire robots, right? You might be the best at the job from a technical standpoint, but if you're not bringing some of your own personality and some lighthearted nature to it, it might be tough to get that role. Obviously, you don't want to overdo it. You don't want to be the jokester or the class clown, but it's not wrong to try to build a little bit of rapport there. And then, as we mentioned, show your personality, answer genuinely, and then to reiterate, companies need you just as much as you need them. And then just be curious. It goes a long way, asking people, genuinely being curious about who they are, their interests, what they're looking for in a candidate. That will go a really long way because it's going to show that you're bringing that same quality to the work that you do every single day.